You're tuned in to Ask the Master Auto Technician. Car questions? Get answers right now. Call 850-763-0555.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.
Good morning, everybody. This is James Morris. This is Friday Morning Show. I have Hanson Hindenburg calling all the way from Baytown Tires. Good morning, Hanson. How are we doing?
Doing great. How are you this morning?
Doing well. You posted something on Facebook the other day I thought was really nice. The appreciation of a mechanic on Facebook. I said, that's the truth. We really need mechanics to keep this world moving. If it wasn't for mechanics, people couldn't get their kids to school, couldn't get in their cars to go. It's a very important job out there.
Well, I was thinking about it. I was actually in an airplane thinking about how important the mechanic is. Cars are, at two-dimensional, but airplanes are three-dimensional, so you got another issue if nothing works. So
well, it's a lot easier to walk away from a car that doesn't run than it is to walk away from a car from a plane that doesn't fly in the middle of the air.
Yes, absolutely.
It's kind of hard to walk away from those sometimes. Matter of fact, I was reading today about it's been 20 years since the Value jet, the one that crashed in the Everglades, 20 years ago today. You remember that? Just made it. It was 110 people died.
Absolutely. They had air tanks in the cargo hold.
I couldn't believe it's been 20 years. 20 years, this week, and I'm going, that's a long time ago. But I remember just like yesterday, they didn't find hardly anything other than some wreckage, and most of the plane went in 40-foot of muck. But that was because mechanics are very, very important to be able to get things right, get their cars working right, get planes working right. If you don't have the mechanical aspect of a plane working right, it could be diddly.
Well, it's an underappreciated skill, I think, in today's society. Especially, not just automotive mechanics or any kind of mechanic, but also air conditioning repair.
Oh.
You definitely need those. People still need to repair appliances. So there's a lot of trades out there that are very important to our everyday lives that we don't really think about.
I think my wife ought to be a repair person for appliances because she's the one that repairs our washer, our dishwasher, our anything that goes wrong in our house. She researches on how to fix it. The hardest part is getting someone to come out and to fix them. They're so busy. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 week list. Wait before they'll come to your house to look at something because you can't exactly take your refrigerator to the repair shop. They have to come to your house. Whereas in the automotive industry, people bring them to us at least, and that makes it a lot easier where we have the equipment. One of the things I was going to ask about, we talk about regulation. We were talking earlier about how much regulations are forced on cars and how much it adds to the cost of it, like tire pressure monitoring systems and things like that. But I was just wondering about airbags. That's one of the things that we've put on cars for the last 20 years now, saved lots of lives. But how many cars do you see coming into your shop with airbag warning lights on that tell you and me that the airbags aren't capable of working?
I would say probably almost 50% if the car is 10 years old.
I would say that too. Yes, 50% is I think is a conservative number. If it's a 2005, I see lots of 2005s, lots of 2004s, just about every one of them have an airbag light on. And the customer looks at me like, well, that means my airbag doesn't work or it does work. And I go, well, if that light comes on, that means it doesn't work. And a lot of them are like shocked. They said, I just thought that meant I had an airbag. I said, no, that means it doesn't work. It tells you get it fixed. Sometimes they're very, very simple to fix, and sometimes it just requires calibration. We see that a lot on Toyotas. They get in an accident, and if you don't have a scanner to calibrate the occupant seat, I think you have to put 66 pounds of weight in there. It won't calibrate, and the light will come on. Nothing wrong with it, just needs to be calibrated, but you have to have a scanner to do it. We see a lot of Hondas that come in with the seat belt buckle, and I'm sure you have too. It's always a code for the seat belt buckle on the driver's side that always goes bad. I shouldn't say
very
always.
Common.
Very common, and it's under warranty, recall, but yet customers don't pay attention to it. Once a car gets old, they just don't think it's important. And I think airbags are very, very important. A lot of people are kind of upset because some of them can explode, and we got that scare going on right now.
And that's, I wonder about how long an airbag really can last and work properly. I don't think we've ever really researched it enough to say, hey, some of these cars are 20, 25 years old now.
When they first
the
came out,
airbags still work.
Yeah, well, when they first came out, they said 10 years. that was the lifespan on it. And everybody said, yeah, let's see what happens. Well, 10 years rolled around, and they're still working. And then 20 years rolled around, they're still working. But they don't always work as designed. They were talking about how they become, shrapnel could come from the airbag if they're deployed. And remember, an airbag deploys at over 300 miles an hour, approximately, in that area. That's pretty darn fast. And if shrapnel's coming out at you, and maybe you don't have a seatbelt on, because that's why they're called SRS, supplemental restraint. You're supposed to have a seatbelt on, but a lot of people don't like to wear seatbelts, and they have airbags. And I say, if you have an airbag, you need to disable it if you're not going to wear a seatbelt, because they can get you killed faster.
You have more than one airbag in most cars now. You have someone in the window, some in the seat, so a lot of things are going to happen.
Now, do you see any of them? Have you ever had any of them customer comes in with a deployed airbag and they can't figure out why? You had one?
I have not had that happen to me.
I have. I've had it come in. I've had it come in my shop. My side airbag's deployed over there. My airbag light's on. I look over there and I said, "And your side airbag's deployed too." And they go, "What?" And I look over there behind the passenger side seat, and I say, "That bag's deployed. You can see it's kind of broken loose over there." And they go, "How'd that happen?" And then I go over and look at the side of the car, and there's a dent in the driver's door. And I go, "Right there. That's how." And they go, "Well, I don't remember that." And I went, "Well, someone hit your car." That's the only thing I can tell you, because the airbag deployed. Side airbag. I think they said that most impacts on cars are in the sides and the rears. Not that many are in the front end, even though most people think most collisions take place in the front end. There's a lot of side impact and a lot of rear end impacts out there that make those airbags go off.
Yeah, I've never really been involved in a head-on accident.
No,
but, most of the time I've been hit in the rear a couple of times, and on the side as well, the front fender especially.
Yeah, well, well, speaking of rear end collisions, you don't want to be in a Volkswagen Beetle if you get hit in the rear end, because we know what happens on those. Because there's on those old Beetles. Speaking of safety, how much cars have progressed. Remember the old Beetles? Before they put a headrest in there, if you got hit in the rear end, you could go back and actually hit your head on the back seat, causing you to become paralyzed. I mean, that was in the early ones, and they've come so far since then. Now we don't have to worry about that happening. Even the old Beetles, they redesigned the seats on the Super Beetles to keep that from happening. But,
well, and people sometimes remove the headrest. I've seen it in trucks and things like that. They're there for a very specific reason. I mean, really, the headrest, and have it properly adjusted, definitely save your life maybe one day.
A lot of people don't realize that headrests are there for a reason. They're actually there for rear end collisions. Not there to make you comfortable, but they're there to keep your head from snapping backwards, and they should be adjusted properly. But yeah, we see a lot of people come in with the airbag lights on. We see a lot of people come in with check engine lights on, and I see a lot of people come in with stability vehicle stability control off, and I know you do as well. And what seems to be the biggest reason they don't want to get that fixed, in your opinion?
Well, I think financial reasons are always the biggest drivers. You talked about Toyota usually has issues with their ABS or their StabiliTrak control modules, and you're looking at a pretty good chunk of change. It can be about $1,000.
It can be very expensive, and that's the thing that I was talking about to someone. We were talking about this morning about that's mandated regulations that are put on cars. Approximately 10% of the value of a car is mandated regulations, whether it's a tire pressure monitoring system, emission requirements, things that have to be on there to keep the car safe, keep it compliant with EPA laws. And when you start adding all these things to it, well, we were talking about a diesel engine, just the diesel particulate filter and the exhaust system on the newer model 2011 diesels. That's a $4,500 assembly, my cost, that is mandated to go on all the 2011 and newer diesels. They have to have this type system, and it's rather expensive. Not exactly inexpensive for cars out there, and that is mandated. And well, we're talking about a $50,000 truck too.
But again, it's added another 10% to the cost.
It does. It adds it up. And now there's advantages. What are some of the advantages you can think of these safety equipment out here?
Oh, cars are way safer than they used to be. I always like to look at they have on YouTube where they crash a 1970s Cadillac, a huge Cadillac, into like a Toyota Corolla, and the Toyota Corolla is much safer than the 1970s Cadillac. You'd think there's so much steel in there.
Right.
And the thing basically just completely collapses
Yes.
and crushes the driver. Why you think, oh, the Toyota Corolla is kind of cheap and plasticky. Is much safer, and it protects the occupant 10 times better.
Well, that is so true. Things have gotten better. I mean, but when I first got started as a kid, my seat belts weren't even required. I mean, it was an optional item back in the 60s to have seat belts. I don't think they were required to 67, 68, somewhere in that area. They became mandatory to be put on cars, maybe. It was somewhere in that general area. I know PCV valves came out on cars. That was part of the first emissions in 1968. That was the very first emissions with putting a PCV valve on a car.
Well, but think about also all these safety features. Their primary, intent is to make the car safer and run more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And fuel injection, I think, is the greatest
Yes.
invention ever. When we went from the carburetor to fuel injection, much more reliable, and of course, much more efficient.
Yeah. Right now, how uncommon is it to see a car with 200,000 miles come in your shop?
Oh, very, very common.
Very common. Now, 30 years ago, how common was it to see a car with 200,000 miles on it?
I don't think
you weren't that old, were you?
No, I wasn't that old, but I got 25 years under my belt.
Well,
I remember, 50, 60,000 miles.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're rebuilding the engine.
Yeah, you were throwing the car away at 50, 60. No, it's 70,000 miles 30 years ago. That was a high mileage car. I call a high mileage car now 250,000 miles. That's considered high mileage.
Well, we see a lot of the fleet vehicles, 350,
No.
400,000 miles, and you would have never seen that,
No.
30, 40 years ago.
We had a customer, we loaned him one of our loaner cars, and it has 225,000 miles on it. And he came back, he said, for a car with 225,000 miles on it, I cannot believe how well it rides. And I said, well, after $3,000 worth of maintenance, it should ride better after putting struts and everything inside it. But for 225,000 miles, a car rides like a brand new vehicle. He was very impressed with it. Of course, we were fixing his car. He had a high mileage car, I guess you might. He had 110,000 miles, and he was putting money into it. And he said, if I can get another 100,000 miles out of my car, I'm going to keep it. And I said, sir, there's no reason you can't get 200, 300,000 miles out of your vehicle.
Well, and the math has changed. Years ago, when cars were $10,000, $15,000, sometimes those expensive repairs didn't make sense. But now the car or truck, especially, is 35, 40, 45,000 miles, and you have to put $2,000 or $3,000 into it to keep it going for 3 or 4 more years. Then just the payments alone in the first 6 months will make that.
Absolutely, that's so true about that. But if people want to know more about tires, I know they can. You are the Tires Pro expert here in Bay County, and they can reach you at 873-8900 and talk to you, or talk to Regina, or talk to who else is giving answers about car tires down there.
We have Diane, we have Richard. Lots of knowledgeable people.
Yes.
Whoever you feel comfortable with talking to, we'd gladly invite you to do so.
And Diana probably put you to work back there putting tires on. If you
She's going to explain it to you and show you what's going on.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on. We're going to have to go. We'll talk to you next Friday again. Thank you so much. We're going to get Mark Sarlo on here in a few minutes. And you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next Friday.
You do the same.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye now.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, beep.